How are we doing, folks? Your host Moose here on the Pitt Panthers Football Network. We welcome you to the Season 4 Week 15 Around the NCAA recap show and Conference Championship Week preview. And we have got a huge week to recap. Of course, the Big 12 was decided this week. And with Oklahoma blowing out Oklahoma State 48-14 and Texas smoking Kansas State 52-21, that means you finish with 4 Big 12 teams with 10-2 records. And Texas, by virtue of the head-to-head tiebreaker over Kansas State, will win the Big 12. Some other Big 12 games: TCU beats Kansas, Texas Tech and Baylor both get to bowl eligible with their wins. Troy wins to go to 9-3, good season for them. Arkansas State clinches a perfect season in the Sun Belt, beating Texas State. They go to 11-1. UL Lafayette beats UL Monroe to go to 9-3, and Navy beats Army 37-17. Gigantic game for senior quarterback Zach Abey, his final game for the Naval Academy, and it is a big one. 37-17, the midshipmen win, and so that means they at least spoil the party for the Black Knights, who will be going bowling. Navy won't, but they do get a win over their arch rivals. Players of the week: Jeff Anderson, redshirt sophomore outside linebacker for Idaho, sacked, forced a fumble and recovered it in Idaho's victory over South Alabama. And Sawyer Smith, 5-touchdown, 400-yard performance in a win for Troy over Georgia State. With those results, though, you can see the polls have changed slightly. Texas goes up to number 7 with their win over Kansas State. Additionally, Oklahoma State drops down from their ranking, which means UCLA jumps up to number 5. Pitt jumps up to 8, NC State to 6, Auburn to 9. Oklahoma, big win over Oklahoma State, brings them all the way up to number 10. So good season for them. You can see Houston's at 11. Oklahoma State drops all the way down to 12 from number 5. I don't think there was a lot of thought that they were actually number 5. That's just where, NCAA had them ranked. Penn State down to 13, USC up to 15. Kansas State falls to 19 with their loss to Texas, so they drop 4 spots in the polls, knocks them out of any hope they might have had of getting into the college football playoff. And it makes things interesting because there's probably not a great chance that a Big 12 team is going to get into the college football playoff now, because they all have 2 losses. They won't have that additional 13th game to at least maybe push them over the edge that another team with 2 losses may have. Such as, to be honest, your Pitt Panthers are 10-2 right now. If they get a big win over NC State, who knows what could happen. But we take a look around the NCAA. Conference Championship Week is upon us, and there are some gigantic games. Probably 5 of the 8 Conference Championship games this week could play a role in deciding who makes the college football playoff. There's that many teams that are still in the mix as it stands right now, so it's going to be very interesting to see how things shake out. And we get off to a great start very early on. The first game of the day is already gigantic. It's Western Kentucky at UAB at noon, and it's going to be the Blazers trying to convince the committee that their undefeated season, should they clinch one, means they deserve to go to the college football playoff. They're playing a Western Kentucky team that's been good in conference but not good overall. They're very poor offensively, and they're probably going to get torched by UAB's pass offense that's number 2 in the country. So that'll be a big game, a big show me, improve me game for the Blazers. UCF looking to upset number 11 Houston. Of course, former Pitt quarterback transfer Ben DiNucci leads their very prolific passing offense against a Houston team that's just been good all overall. Number 8 offense, number 7 defense, but they also have 3 wins against FCS schools. Their first 3 wins were FCS games. So we don't really know what Houston has to offer to us, to be honest. They could finish 12-1. And nobody will really be that impressed by it, to be honest. So we'll see what happens in that contest. In the Mountain West, Boise State, they were 5-7 last year. They've redeemed themselves. They're back in the Mountain West Championship game at 9-3, taking on a solid San Diego State squad that has the 9th best rushing offense in the country. So a little bit of juxtaposition in styles there. Boise's pretty balanced. San Diego State likes to pound the rock on the ground. That should be a fun one. And then kind of the last mid-major championship game that we'll see, you got Western Michigan taking on a very good Ohio team. Their only 2 losses have come to Pitt and to Wake Forest in their opening 2 games of the season. They've won 10 straight since then. Number 5 passing offense in the country going against the number 4 pass defense in the country. Western Michigan also fantastic turnover margin on the season. So that should be an interesting one to watch if Quentin Maxwell and Ohio can come out guns blazing, pass the football all over the field. and get their 11th straight victory. Now, Pac-12 championship, you got the SEC championship, so many big games that are going to be of importance in this particular week. Pac-12, UCLA coming off of a loss. They did lose to USC in their last regular season game, so they need to beat Oregon to have any chance of making the playoff here because they do have a weak schedule. They will have starting quarterback Devin Modster back, and Oregon will be missing starting quarterback Justin Herbert, but they do have a true junior, so a generated recruit, true junior who's like an 89 overall, Sam Miller, very good player. He'll be their starting quarterback in this game. He won their game against Oregon State last week or 2 weeks ago, so that'll be an interesting one to see if Oregon can pull the upset with a backup. Ohio State, they already beat Wisconsin once on the season, though it was a bit of a nail-biter, so the Buckeyes look to clinch a perfect season before the playoff. I'd expect even with a loss, unless they got blown out, they'll probably still make the playoff regardless, but Dwayne Haskins and company looking to really put an exclamation mark on their season and shut down a Wisconsin offense that's been surprisingly good passing the football and just good overall, but the Buckeyes, number 3 offense, number 8 defense, they've been a juggernaut this season. Again, Wisconsin, a good turnover margin, so it'll be interesting to see if that plays a factor in this game. Now, the SEC championship, LSU, the other unbeaten in the country, number 1 offense, just ridiculous how many yards they've been putting up this season. Joe Burrow and Nick Brissett have been an incredible 1-2 tandem in their backfield, and they have a good defense as well, solid against the run. Georgia has not been that impressive this season. It's an unimpressive 10-2 as you might ever be able to see. 41st ranked defense, 30th ranked offense. I think it's LSU's number 1 ranking to lose, number 1 playoff seed to lose. It'll be interesting to see how they come out in the SEC championship game, but I'd expect them to get past Georgia, as does Kirk Herbstreit. But a lot of really good games that are going to be on tap in this coming week. I mean, so many games that have so much importance. Another one that's gigantic, the ACC championship game. Pitt returns for the 3rd time in 4 years. NC State gets there for the first time, as Clemson will not be in the ACC championship game for the first time in, I think, 5 seasons. And NC State and Pitt have a bit of a juxtaposition of styles. NC State loves to pound the rock, number 10 rush offense, Pitt number 29 passing offense. Now, what'll be interesting is NC State's very good against the pass, number 2 passing defense. Pitt's very good against the run, number 1 rush defense. So the two areas where the teams show their most strength offensively is where their opponent has their most strength defensively. So it's going to be a great juxtaposition of styles. I think it'll probably be a low-scoring game by any indication of the way these two teams like to play football, but it should be a lot of fun. It's going to be very interesting to see who comes out, because realistically, NC State, if they win, they'll be in the playoff. If Pitt wins, who knows what could happen? They'll at least be in the conversation. I don't think they're a shoo-in or even it's not a high likelihood. I think if you gave it a percentage, it's probably 35 to 40% chance, but that's more than 0. That is absolutely certain. So be interesting to see how Pitt will do. NC State led by Jacoby Myers at quarterback, who I think in real life became a receiver, but he's still a quarterback in here, and he's had an okay season. 24 touchdowns. He does turn the ball over a little bit, 13 interceptions, but he's a good runner. I think he has a total of like 240 yards combined per game, both passing and rushing the football. And then, of course, they got Johnny Frazier, who's been an incredible running back for them. They've had a stretch of games in this season. They won their first 5 before losing to Florida State, and then have won their next 6 since that. Now, the interesting thing to see with NC State, even though they've been very, very good, they don't have a ton of high-quality opponents, to be honest. Their non-conference schedule was pretty weak. They did lose to Florida State. They beat Clemson and Wake Forest, who are both solid ACC schools, and beat Army as well. But Army's kind of a one-trick pony, the option. If you can conquer that, you'll be all right. And we know NC State has a good defense. So it'll be interesting to see how they'll play in this game, because they have a very, very good team, but we're not really sure how great the competition they've played is, so I don't know how much we truly know about them, in spite of the fact that they've played 12 games. Now, the one thing we do know, Johnny Frazier is an absolute tank. 3,200 yards in his career, his second 1,000-yard season in 3 years. He averages 6 yards a carry. The interesting thing I saw, 13 touchdowns. He has no long runs. His longest run this season is 16 yards, and he's run for over 1,000 yards with a 6-yard per carry average. That means he gets like 6 yards on every carry. It means he doesn't go backwards very often. He's a powerful guy, a lot of size on him, and he's going to be very, very good. The one thing you see about this NC State roster, when you look at it, they don't have a ton of top-level talent other than Frazier, their running back. But the other thing you'll notice, their defense is very, very good. A lot of defensive players in the high rankings that you're looking at, and they're pretty deep in terms of the high 80s to mid 80s overall team. Really, really solid. A lot of 88, 87, 86, 89 type players. They're very solid around the board. Again, no superstars, but they're just overall very, very solid. And the thing I think that's interesting is offensively, we match up pretty well with them. Like, their defense is good in the areas that our offense is good. Our defense is good in the areas their offense is good. They kind of match up pretty well. You can see just Jacoby Myers, the senior quarterback. What'll be interesting is depending on how much he scrambles, because, of course, he has very good speed. He's very fleet of foot. He's somebody that could give us trouble. We've had a couple of running quarterbacks that have had good games against us in terms of moving the football with their legs. Tommy Stevens, I think, had a 100-yard performance for Penn State running. Kendall Hinton had a good yardage game. Even Tulane's quarterback, he didn't pass very well, but he was able to run the football pretty well. And then for NC State, interestingly enough, Thaddeus Moss, Randy Moss's son, is their starting fullback, 87 overall, very good player. They might want to consider switching him to tight end, just a hint, little idea for them to utilize him correctly. But they have two really good running backs. Edwin Baker, the redshirt sophomore, is a good player as well. Receiver, they're pretty well balanced. No superstars. Terrence Hill's probably on his way to being a superstar. 91 speed, 86 overall as a true junior. He'll be 90-plus overall going into next season as a true senior. I think he's a very, very good player and probably their most dangerous receiver that we'll have to watch out for. But the one thing I'll say is they don't have any superstar receivers, and our cornerbacks and coverage guys have been very, very good this season, much improved. So I think we'll do well there. Same thing with their line. They don't have anybody at 90, but they're all 85 to 89 across the board. So it'll be a good matchup with our defensive line that has been stellar this season. 3 linemen with 10 sacks, and then Patrick Jones, I think, has 8. So we have at least a combined 38 sacks between all of our defensive linemen. So that's going to be a huge matchup against a solid but not spectacular NC State offensive line. The one area where they do have some weakness is linebacker. Ronald Jefferson, redshirt sophomore outside linebacker. Garrett Hooker, the redshirt junior middle linebacker. They're not spectacular. They do have Riley Nicholson, who's a very good player, but not overly intimidating in that middle 3 of their defense. Now, cornerback, they're very, very good. McLeod, Phillips, Bryce Banks, he's going to play. His injury is like just a strained groin or strained hamstring. He's fine to play. So they have 3 90-plus speed corners that are very good. They're free safety, Kid Glass, very solid player with good speed for a safety. And then Jarius Moorhead and Isaiah Stallings, either one of them that suits up at strong safety, are both very good players. So they have a lot of depth in the secondary. That's going to make it tough for us trying to pass the football. The one area where I think we do have them in terms of our ability is the kicking game. They don't have a great kicker. They don't have a great punter. They're both true freshmen. So I think if we get them in a situation where they have to make a pressure-packed kick, we may be, in favor in that hand. I think I like Jay Bump and Eric Fox to make some big kicks for us rather than NC State's kicker and punter tandem. But it's going to be a fantastic contest. Let me know in the comments, based on these games, who are going to win the big championship games. LSU, do they win? Ohio State, do they win? What's the score going to be? Does Pitt come out victorious over NC State, or does NC State go on to the college football playoff with a victory? Let me know in the comments who you think is going to win all of these games. As always, guys, hail to Pitt. Thank you so much for watching. Take care. We'll see you soon. Hail to Pitt as always. Bye-bye.